No one could have imagined what the CEO would do when he found a cleaning lady breastfeeding, but his reaction stunned even her. Clara was quietly cleaning the floor, while far away, her baby cried, refusing the bottle. Desperate, she'd snuck her daughter into work, and in the most intimate moment of feeding her, she was caught by the owner of the company. She braced for shouting. Instead, he just watched. What happened next changed everything. A story about judgment, empathy, and the power of a human gesture no one saw coming. And in that instant, his gaze said more than any command. The silence in the boardroom was broken only by the soft sound of a baby's breath. Clara, kneeling on the beige carpet, held little Maya to her chest, trying to ignore the fear coiling in her stomach. The baby had finally stopped crying, nursing with a powerful urgency, her eyes half closed, her tiny hands clutching her mother's uniform. The room still smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. The very room where executives made million-dollar deals now served as a makeshift shelter for a moment of pure need. Clara knew she was breaking the rules. She knew she could be fired, but there had been no other option. Maya needed her, and no one else seemed to care. Sitting on the floor, leaning against the glass wall, Clara closed her eyes for a second. The baby was nursing peacefully. That was all that mattered. Until the doorknob turned. Clara had no time to hide anything. The door opened with a faint creak, revealing a man in a dark suit, a leather briefcase in his hand, and exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. His polished shoes stopped at the doorway. His eyes found her on the floor, Arthur Vance, the owner of the company. Time froze. Clara's eyes widened, and she uselessly tried to cover herself with her blouse. Maya made a soft sound, still latched to her breast. Arthur said nothing. He just observed. There was something unreadable in his gaze. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. "Sir, she tried to explain, but her voice broke. Arthur took a deep breath, stepped forward, and slowly closed the door behind him. But he said nothing. He just kept watching, with a strange glimmer in his eyes. Clara Evans had always learned to be quiet when the world was loud. At 25, she was no longer a young dreamer. She was a survivor. Every day, before the sun even rose, she would get out of the narrow bed in the small room she shared with her daughter and cross the tight hallway to the kitchen. The cold concrete floor of her small apartment in the Riverbend district chilled her feet, but she barely noticed anymore. With eyes still heavy with sleep, she'd make black coffee and heat water for the baby's bath. Maya, with her big eyes and fine hair, was her entire world. The daughter of a love that didn't last past the pregnancy announcement. The father had vanished during the pregnancy, claiming he wasn't ready. Clara, on the other hand, had no choice. She had to be ready, or Maya wouldn't survive. She left her daughter every day with Miss Eileen, the widowed neighbor who lived next door, a woman with a big heart and steady hands. She never charged a dime. "God gave me too much love to keep it all to myself," she'd always say. The commute to the city center took almost an hour. 2 buses, a subway ride, a brisk walk down the street of skyscrapers. By the time she arrived at the tech firm where she worked as a cleaner, Clara had already fought her day's first battles. She was invisible to most. Employees hurried past her in the hallways, barely noticing her presence, but she saw everything. The fake smiles in the meeting rooms, the disposable cups left on desks, the expensive shoes that left scuffs on the polished floors. She cleaned it all, without ever complaining, but inside her a knot was tightening. A pressure in her chest every time she had to say goodbye to Maya, every time she left her crying, every time her daughter needed to nurse and she was miles away. That morning something had shattered. Maya's desperate cries over the phone, Miss Eileen's choked-up voice, and then the impulsive decision, "I'm going to get her, even if I get fired." And now, there, on the floor of the boardroom, Clara faced the man who owned everything, as if apologizing for being a mother. But Arthur didn't look away, and she didn't know if that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. What Clara wanted most wasn't money or status or recognition. She just wanted to be a mother, without having to hide for it. In the silence of the hallways, as she waxed the floors and collected dirty cups, her mind always returned to the same image: Maya running in a backyard, laughing, free. A backyard she didn't have yet. A childhood she couldn't yet provide. Being a mother was like carrying crystal across a minefield. One mistake, one stumble, and everything could shatter. She couldn't afford to fail. There was no safety net, no plan B, no wealthy family. It was just her, and that pair of brown eyes that trusted her with the blind faith of a baby. Clara never had much. She grew up bouncing from house to house, between distant relatives and temporary shelters. She knew the coldness of institutions and the harshness of the world. That's why she swore to herself that Maya would never go through that. Her daughter would have stability, security, a room of her own, a mother who was present, even if it meant giving up everything else. But the world doesn't make it easy for people with those kinds of dreams. In reality, everything was a choice. Leave her sick daughter with the neighbor or skip work and lose her job. Accept the double shift for overtime pay or go home early to breastfeed. Buy formula or pay the gas bill. She worked miracles with her $1,800 monthly salary. She saved every penny, bought diapers in bulk, stretched the soap until it was mostly water. She slept little, ate less, but she never let Maya feel a thing. The pain was hers alone. Still, there was a desire that stubbornly surfaced on nights when the baby fell asleep quickly and the silence was too loud. The desire to grow, not to climb the corporate ladder. She didn't even dream of that, but to grow from within, to be heard, to be seen, to be someone other than the cleaner in the blue uniform. She dreamed of one day walking into a meeting not to serve coffee, but to share an idea, to suggest a change, to propose a project that would make a difference in the lives of other mothers like her. Clara saw things no one else noticed. She knew where the company's biggest problems were. She knew which employees were depressed, which were sick, which ones cried in the bathroom stalls. She knew about the mothers hiding their children's illnesses to avoid losing their jobs. She knew about the absent fathers, the salaries that barely covered food. She knew all of this, but she couldn't speak. No one ever asked. Her greatest fear was to spend her whole life like this, invisible, and yet she kept going, because there was Maya, and Maya was the reason. That's why, on that day, even shaking, even terrified, she chose to breastfeed inside the company boardroom, in the middle of her shift, because between getting fired and seeing her daughter cry from hunger, she chose Maya. But what she never imagined was that this instinctive act, the most human and vulnerable she could have committed, would also be the most watched moment of her life. And now, as she faced the gaze of the company's owner, she wondered, did he see weakness or did he see courage? Arthur didn't say anything at that moment. He just nodded, as if silently authorizing the moment to continue, and left the room, closing the door carefully, as if not wanting to break the silence within. Clara remained paralyzed for minutes. Maya was still nursing peacefully, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mother's chest. When the baby finished, she placed her on her shoulder and rocked her gently, trying to stay calm. But her body was shaking. She left the room with Maya wrapped in a thin blanket, as if wanting to hide from the world what the world should never judge. Her supervisor, Brenda, found her in the hallway minutes later. "Clara, what's going on? Are you with the baby here?" Clara tried to explain everything at once, that Maya had been crying for hours, that she wouldn't take a bottle, that Miss Eileen had called in tears, that she had considered everything and decided to take the risk. Brenda frowned. "You know this isn't allowed, right?" I know, she said, holding back tears. "And Mr. Vance, he saw me." In the boardroom, Brenda fell silent. She wasn't a bad woman. She was just a practical woman who followed rules, and at that moment, she didn't know whether to comfort or reprimand. "Just go home, Clara. Take her home. We'll talk tomorrow." The next day, Clara arrived early. With Maya once again in Miss Eileen's care, her heart was heavy but resolute. She needed to show she was responsible, that she respected the boundaries, that the incident had been an exception. But the looks, they weren't the same. Two of her cleaning colleagues, who used to share laughs with her in the locker room, now whispered when she walked by. One of them, Janine, shot her a crooked smile. "Well, well, look at Mum of the Year." Clara pretended not to hear, but she heard. During her break, she noticed some office employees watching her from a distance, discreetly. The news had spread. They didn't know the details, but they knew enough. The cleaner brought her daughter to work, breastfed in the middle of the office, and didn't get fired. It was as if a code had been broken. She was a mother, and she had shown it a little too much. In the afternoon, she tried to act normal. She cleaned rooms, emptied trash cans, restocked toilet paper, but her heart was restless. Then, at 4 p.m., her keycard failed at the entrance to the 5th-floor break room. A clear sign. Her access had been temporarily revoked. She went down to the administrative office to understand why, but no one could explain. "System orders," they said. It was already evening when Brenda called her back for a talk. The supervisor looked uncomfortable. "Clara, I received a notification from HR. It seems your presence with the baby generated some comments. There's a question about conduct and safety in the workplace." "Comments from who?" "From superiors. But I have to be honest with you. This could have repercussions." Clara felt the floor give way. "Am I going to be fired?" "I don't know yet. But you might need to provide a formal explanation." Clara went home with her eyes burning. She didn't even have the courage to tell Miss Eileen. She just hugged Maya for several long minutes. The baby giggled, not understanding the weight of the world crashing down on her mother's shoulders. The next day, she tried to deliver a letter explaining her actions, but no one in HR would take it directly. Everything was silence, coldness, half-open doors and whispers, until, in the middle of the hallway, she heard Janine's voice. "Must be nice to have the boss protecting you, huh?" Clara stopped. That was more than gossip. It was poison. But she didn't respond. She couldn't. She was alone, once again, and the worst was yet to come. Friday morning began like the others. Clean uniform, pinned at the collar where a button had been lost, hair tied in a bun, worn-out sneakers on her feet. Clara followed her silent ritual, trying to ignore the weight growing in her chest. At the front desk, the security guard greeted her with a shy nod, different from his usual cheerful, "Good morning." In the elevator, a receptionist avoided her gaze. And when she reached the locker room, the chatter suddenly stopped. 3 cleaning colleagues, Janine among them, fell silent as soon as she entered. Clara felt the air grow heavy. She pretended not to hear. She sat in her corner, organized her bag, and headed for the 1st floor. But something was wrong. While mopping the common area floor, she heard giggles coming from the break room, and suddenly she realized they were talking about her. "Breastfeeding in the middle of the office? Ridiculous," one voice said. "No, what's worse is if it's true, that she's involved with the boss. Oh, please, nobody breastfeeds out of necessity. That's for attention. Manipulation." Clara's blood ran cold. For a second, she thought she was going to be sick. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and tried to continue. But she couldn't. In the next hallway, 2 men from finance walked past her, and one whispered, "Careful, she might whip it out at any moment." They laughed and walked on as if nothing had happened. Clara leaned against the wall. She felt the world spinning. It wasn't just shame. It was helplessness, an exposure she hadn't caused, but that was now burning her alive from the inside. She tried to talk to Brenda, but the supervisor was in a meeting. She looked for Sharon in HR, but was told she was not available for unscheduled matters. The company that had always treated her with indifference now saw her all too clearly, but for the worst reasons. At noon, as she prepared to eat lunch in an isolated corner of the cafeteria, everything collapsed. Janine walked in, laughing loudly, accompanied by 2 employees from the administrative department. One of them was holding a phone, open to a group chat. "Look at this, Clara," Janine said with a mocking tone. "It even made it to the IT guys' group chat. Someone filmed you in that room, you know." Clara's eyes widened. "What? You on the floor, breastfeeding. They got it from the internal camera. They say Mr. Vance walked in right then. What a beautiful scene, huh?" She felt her legs give out. "That's illegal. That's an invasion of privacy." "Oh, sweetie," Janine said with a venomous smile, "you're the one who put yourself in that position. If you didn't want to be seen, you shouldn't have made a scene." "I didn't make a scene. My daughter was hungry. Everyone has problems, but nobody throws themselves at the boss because of it." Laughter echoed through the cafeteria. Clara stood up so fast she almost knocked over her plate. The tears were already streaming down her face before she even reached the door. She ran to the ground floor restroom, locked herself in the last stall, and buried her face in her hands. There, alone, she could finally break down. It wasn't just the video or the comments. It was the certainty that to the world, motherhood was only respected if it was silent, that a poor woman was only admired when she endured everything quietly, that being truly seen was dangerous. And the worst part, she didn't know how to fix it. That afternoon, Brenda finally called her in. Her face was serious, almost embarrassed. "Clara, I heard about the video. It ended up in internal groups. The legal team is looking into it. We don't know how it leaked, but the fallout is out of control. I didn't know there was a camera there. I was never told about that. I was just trying to calm my daughter. She wouldn't take a bottle. I know, but unfortunately some people are using this against you." "This is absurd." "I agree. But there are people in administration suggesting you be put on leave until this is all investigated. It's not an official punishment yet. It's just a preventive measure." Clara fell silent. She knew what that meant. She knew that preventive leave was just the beginning of the end. Can you give me until the end of the day?" she asked in a low voice. "Just to finish what's left." Brenda nodded. That night, Clara cleaned the entire lobby in silence, floor by floor, elevator by elevator, as if each sweep of the mop was a farewell. And on the top floor, she stopped in front of the room where it all began. The lights were off, the door ajar. She thought about going in, just to say goodbye, but as she got closer, she heard footsteps, firm footsteps, familiar. And then the door opened all the way, and there he was, Arthur Vance. Again, and this time with a very different look in his eyes. He was there, standing in the doorway of the room where it all began. Arthur Vance wore a shirt with no jacket, sleeves rolled up, and a weariness on his face that didn't just come from work. For a moment, Clara thought about running, apologizing, fleeing the embarrassment, but she didn't move. "Are you okay?" he asked, his low voice a stark contrast to the company's silence at that hour. She hesitated. She wanted to say yes, that everything was fine, that the laughter, the rumors, and the stares didn't affect her, but she couldn't. "I don't know," she finally answered, her eyes welling up. "But thank you for asking." He nodded slowly, and to her surprise he stepped aside. "Come in, please." Clara entered silently. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the city outside, reflected in the windows. Arthur closed the door behind them and sat in the armchair he usually occupied during meetings. "I heard about the video, and about what they're saying. So, you also think I did something wrong, that I took advantage of the situation?" "I think you were a mother, and that's the bravest thing anyone can be in a place like this." Clara couldn't hold back her tears. She tried to wipe her eyes discreetly, but he noticed, "It's not your fault. Whoever leaked that video broke serious privacy laws. I've already asked the legal team to investigate." "But the damage," he sighed, "it's already done, isn't it?" "I'm not a threat," she said, her voice choked. "I just wanted my daughter to eat. I just wanted her to stop crying. I didn't plan any of this. I know that. I knew it from the first second. It was one of the most real moments I've ever witnessed in this building." She looked at him, surprised. "Real?" "Yes. This room has seen it all. million-dollar contracts, tense meetings, strategies that changed the course of the company. But it had never seen love. It had never seen someone give everything for another person. Until that day, silence settled between them. A silence filled with unsaid things. Even so, they're going to put me on leave, right? It was suggested, but I didn't authorize it. But that could hurt you. People are already saying that I don't care what they're saying, Clara. I care about what's right. She felt her chest tighten again. I don't want to be a problem. It's enough that I'm poor, a single mom, a cleaner. Don't say that, but it's true. I'm easy to judge. They look at me and think they know everything. And I'm tired, Mr. Vance. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't hurt. He stood up slowly and walked closer, not as a boss, but as someone who understood what it was like to carry the world on your shoulders. You're not the problem, Clara. You're a reminder of what we've forgotten in here, humanity. She lowered her eyes. For the first time in days, she felt less alone, but there was still fear. So what happens to me now? Are they just going to leave me here until they get tired of me and fire me? Arthur was silent for a few seconds. Then he walked over to the bookshelf behind his desk and picked up a blue folder. This is an old company project. It never got off the ground. A support program for employees with young children. Daycare, education assistance, flexible schedules. And why didn't it move forward? It lacked someone with the sensitivity to truly understand what was needed. He placed the folder in front of her. And what do I have to do with this? Everything. Clara laughed nervously. I'm a cleaner. I don't have a degree. I don't have training. But you have something no one else here has. Lived experience. You know where the shoe pinches. You can help me build this. For real. She stared at the proposal as if it were a mirage. Is this serious? Completely. But what will the others say? That a brave woman did what no one else had the courage to do. Clara swallowed hard. Her head told her to refuse, to not get involved, to protect the little she had. But her heart told her that maybe this moment was the beginning of something bigger. I don't know if I can do it. We'll learn together. She looked at the folder in her hands. For a second, she thought of Maya sleeping peacefully, no longer needing to nurse in secret. Maybe there was still hope. That night, Clara left the building with swollen eyes, but not from sadness. For the first time in a long time, she felt something different. She just didn't know that someone was about to change everything. Have you ever had to choose between your job and your child? Have you ever felt guilty for doing the right thing, even when you were being judged for it? If you have, just comment "I get it" down below. Just so I know, there are more people out there who've had to be strong when everything told them to give up. I'm reading everything. I'm with you. The weekend passed slowly. Clara tried to stick to her routine as if nothing had happened. But inside, everything was different. She thought about Arthur, about the dark room, about the blue folder that now rested on her kitchen table between the jar of baby food and the wet wipes. It was surreal to think that had been placed in her hands. A real project, with the company's seal, and the most unlikely invitation she had ever received, but at the same time, the doubt was paralyzing. Is this real, or just another elegant way to push me aside? Ms. Eileen, as always, noticed her restlessness. You're not eating, child. That's the sign of a troubled heart. Clara smiled sheepishly. It's just exhaustion. It's hope. I recognize it. On Monday she arrived early, uniform pressed, hair neatly tied, a touch of makeup, a rare sight. She wanted to appear strong, even if she was still in pieces on the inside. Brenda, her supervisor, met her in the hallway and said that Arthur was waiting for her in the fourth-floor conference room. Just you and him. Nothing formal. For now. Clara went up slowly, feeling her heart beat in rhythm with her steps. When she entered the room, Arthur was already there. No suit, no briefcase, just him, with an open notebook and a calm expression. Good morning, Clara. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Enough. He smiled faintly and pushed the notebook toward her. I spent the weekend thinking about what this project could be. I made some notes, but I realized it needs to start from a real place, from your experience. She sat down slowly. She looked at the notebook and then at him. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're the right person, and because if this project is born from your hands, it will be born from an honest place, from someone who knows the pain. Clara took a deep breath. There was still fear, still insecurity, but there, faced with that gesture, a part of her began to rise. I can try. That's all I ask. Let's start small. You help me put together a report on the needs of employees who are mothers. After that, we present it to HR. If it works, we grow. And my current job? It stays the same. No one will say you were given special treatment. This is extra. Voluntary if you want. And if it works, we make it official. She nodded. It was a chance. Still risky. Still surrounded by rumors. But for the first time, she felt she could be heard. Not as an exception, but as a benchmark. That afternoon, Clara walked through the hallways differently. She was still the cleaner in the blue uniform, but now she carried a new notebook in her bag where she began to write everything down. Stories from colleagues, difficulties, suggestions. It was there during the 3 p.m. coffee break that things started to shift. An HR employee named Megan saw her writing and approached. Are you doing some kind of research? It's a survey about mothers in the company. Arthur asked for my help. Megan raised an eyebrow, surprised, but she didn't mock her. If you want, I can get you the data from our last internal census. I think it could help. Really? Really? What you're doing is important. A lot of people say the company needs to think about mothers, but nobody listens to the people actually living it. Clara smiled for the first time in days. On her way out, she ran into Brenda in the elevator. The supervisor was serious, but there was something different in her posture. I heard about the project. And what do you think? I think it's about time someone spoke up for us. I just hope you have the stamina because they're going to try and shut you down. I have a daughter. For her, I have stamina until the end. Brenda didn't reply, but she nodded, a silent vote of confidence. That night when she got home, Clara held Maya in her lap and let her nurse without rushing. The baby was calm, her eyes slowly closing as she fed. And in that intimate silence between mother and daughter, she thought, if this project moves forward, if just one woman doesn't have to go through what I went through, it will have all been worth it. And then her phone vibrated. It was a message from Arthur. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., room 6. We're presenting your idea to the committee. She read the message 3 times, and she knew, in that instant, that from now on, nothing would ever be the same. Room 6 was one of the smallest in the building, but that morning it felt immense to Clara. Sitting at the end of the table, notebook in hand, she looked at the faces before her. 2 HR managers, a social projects coordinator, and Arthur, sitting further back, observing without intervening. He wasn't the one leading the meeting, and that was intentional. He wanted her voice to stand on its own, and it did. With a voice still trembling but clear, Clara read her report. Anonymous testimonials from female employees, suggestions for flexible hours for mothers, a dedicated space for nursing mothers, daycare assistants, and even emotional support groups for single mothers. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was real. When she finished, the room was silent. The HR coordinator was the first to speak. You really gathered all of this in just 4 days? Yes, by talking to anyone who was willing to talk. And by listening to what no one usually asks. And how do you see this project unfolding in the coming months? Clara swallowed. I don't have all the answers. But I'm sure that if we listen to these women, we can create something that prevents others from going through what I went through. The managers exchanged discreet glances. There was no applause, no forced praise, but there was something even rarer in that environment. Respect. At the end of the meeting, Arthur approached her. You were strong, and you touched on something no one usually touches, the truth that no one wants to see. I was shaking the whole time. But you spoke anyway, that's courage. In the days that followed, something different began to happen. Some employees started greeting her by name. Megan from HR asked for her help with a new form. Even Brenda invited her for an informal chat about the difficulties faced by the cleaning staff. The walls of the building, once so cold, began to echo with different sounds. But the transformation didn't come without resistance. Janine continued to spread malicious comments. She said Clara was sleeping with the boss, that it was all just an act. Some employees began to treat her with a certain contempt, as if she had gotten too big for her britches. And worse, an employee from the legal department confided in a low voice in the restroom that some directors were uncomfortable with the undue prominence of a cleaning assistant. Clara heard it all in silence. She cried once or twice, but she didn't back down. She continued wearing her blue uniform, continued taking the crowded subway, continued cleaning desks. But now, between floors, she would go up for discreet meeting. At night, she studied terms on her phone she barely knew: budget feasibility, inclusion management, internal protocol. She was teaching herself. One afternoon, upon arriving home, she found Maya with a fever. Nothing serious, according to Miss Eileen, just teething. But it was enough to remind her that no matter how much she tried to change the world, her priority would always be one thing: protecting that little life. That night, as she put Maya to sleep, Clara looked up at the peeling plaster ceiling and thought, is it worth it to keep going? The doubt was fair. After all, every new step came with more pressure, more judgment. The same people who once ignored her now analyzed her from head to toe. The next day, Arthur called her for a talk. The committee wants to move forward with your proposal, but they want you to present it to the entire board of directors. The board? She choked. Me? Yes, officially, as the author of the proposal. She fell silent. What if I freeze up? What if they laugh at me? Then you take a deep breath, and you speak anyway. I'm just a cleaner. No. You're the woman who had the courage to breastfeed her daughter knowing she could lose everything. And the entire company saw that. She didn't answer right away. She asked for 2 days to think. And for the first time, Arthur didn't insist. He just smiled. Whatever you decide, you've already done more than many people in high-ranking positions ever will. On the way home, Clara felt the city spin around her, as if something was about to break. Or break open. That night, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time. She saw the uniform, the dark circles under her eyes, the calloused hands. But she also saw something new in her own eyes. Presence. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Arthur, but then she deleted it. She looked at Maya's crib, then at the blue folder on the table, and then, in silence, she made a decision. One of those that, once made, there's no turning back. The company auditorium had never seemed so large. 35 chairs occupied by directors, coordinators, and managers. A large screen was on, projecting the title of the meeting, Present Mothers Project, a proposal for support and inclusion for employees with young children. And, standing before all of them, was Clara, without a uniform. For the first time in 2 years, she was there in regular clothes, a simple white shirt, dark jeans, clean sneakers. But it was still her, with steady hands, her hair tied back, and her heart beating like a drum inside her chest. Arthur was in the front row, but he said nothing. He just gave a discreet nod. It was the signal. Clara took a deep breath. Good afternoon. My name is Clara Evans, and until yesterday, I was known here only as the cleaner from the 3rd floor. Some people shifted in their seats, others crossed their arms. A little over 2 weeks ago, I had to make a difficult decision. My 4-month-old daughter was crying non-stop. She was refusing a bottle, and my neighbor who cares for her was desperate. I brought my daughter to work, in secret. I breastfed her on the floor of an empty room. I thought I would be fired, but I was seen. Silence. Since then, a lot has happened. Comments, judgments, a leaked video. People saying I took advantage of the situation. Others saying a poor woman shouldn't occupy this kind of space. She took a breath. her throat tight. But I also found support, and that's why I wrote this project. It's simple, but it's born from something very real, the desire to prevent other mothers from going through what I went through. She then clicked the remote and changed the slide. The data she had gathered appeared: the number of employees with young children, the rate of excused absences due to maternal issues, anonymous accounts of postpartum depression and physical exhaustion. I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree, but I listened. I spoke with dozens of women from here. Cleaning, reception, administration, all with something in common: guilt. The feeling that being a mother is being a problem, that you have to hide it, silence it, until it hurts. Some expressions began to change. A few female managers looked at each other. A man from the legal department was typing something on his phone, but Clara didn't stop. The proposal is simple: create a dedicated space for nursing mothers, allow more flexible schedules for mothers with babies up to a year old, and offer at least partial, even if symbolic, daycare assistance for single mothers. Silence. But it was a listening silence. This isn't charity. It's a human strategy. Mothers balance everything: deadlines, children, debt, sleepless nights. Mothers are multitaskers by nature. If they are seen, heard, and respected, they can become the strongest pillars of a company. She paused, and then she finished. I didn't come here to ask for a favor. I came to offer something, a way to do things differently, more fairly, more humanely, and perhaps more efficiently too. Total silence. For a second, Clara felt the floor disappear. She was afraid no one would say anything, that someone would mock her, or worse, that they would thank her with a fake smile and file everything away in some drawer. That's when Megan, from HR, raised her hand. I've read the report, and I want to say that I fully support it. I've never seen a proposal born with so much truth. Then another manager stood up. This could help with the retention of female talent. We've already lost good employees because we don't have the infrastructure for this. Arthur remained silent, watching, but what happened next surprised even him. Brenda, the cleaning supervisor, stood up at the back of the auditorium. I'm a single mother too. I saw myself in every word. We get used to swallowing everything in silence. But today I felt like someone spoke for us. There was a brief round of applause, timid, but it was enough. And then another person, and another. It wasn't an ovation, but it was respect, recognition, and most importantly, change. At the end of the meeting, the committee announced that the project would enter a trial phase for the next 2 months. The first nursing support room would be set up on the 3rd floor, and Clara would be part of the advisory committee. She didn't know whether to cry or smile. On her way out, Arthur approached her with a coffee in his hand and a different look in his eyes. You didn't need me, but I'm proud to have stood by your side. I'm still shaking on the inside. That's how you change the world. Shaking, but you go anyway. She took the coffee, laughed, and looked at her reflection in the building's glass. It was her, with her hands still marked by cleaning, but now with something new on her face: resolve. Outside, the sky was beginning to change color. End of the afternoon, the beginning of everything. And inside, she knew, no matter what they said. From that moment on, the company had heard a voice it could never ignore again. The days following the presentation were unlike anything Clara had ever experienced within that company. She wasn't promoted, she didn't receive a bonus. Her life wasn't turned upside down, but something much more profound happened. She ceased to be invisible. In the elevator, greetings now came with her full name. Good morning, Clara Evans. Congratulations on the presentation. In the break room where she used to hear muffled whispers, she now heard whispers of admiration. That's her, the woman from the Mothers Project. She's the one who spoke to the board. Some colleagues who had never noticed her before began to approach her. One of them, Claire from accounting, brought her a folded piece of paper. It's a thank you letter. I wrote it because I didn't have the courage to speak in front of everyone. You gave me the courage to think about having another child again. Clara treasured the letter, But not everyone reacted with maturity. Janine, who had been one of the biggest silent opponents, was now quiet. Her comments vanished, and with them some of the poison that had fueled the hallways. Not out of remorse, but because now criticizing Clara made her the one who looked bad. Instead of whispering, Janine started avoiding her. And that was a victory. In the supervisor's office, Brenda seemed torn between pride and embarrassment. One afternoon, as Clara was restocking paper in the second-floor restroom, Brenda approached. "I need to apologize to you," she said bluntly. Clara turned, surprised. "Apologize? I was hard on you in the beginning. I thought bringing a baby to work was irresponsible, that you didn't understand the risks, but I was the one who didn't understand anything." Clara smiled. "I made mistakes too. I did it out of desperation. But today, I would do it again, I know. And that's why you've become such an example." The two shared a brief hug, and in that short gesture, much was healed. In the administrative area, Megan began inviting her to weekly meetings. She said Clara had a way of listening that many professionals lacked, and she proposed something unexpected: training. "Have you ever thought about studying human resources management?" "Me? Yes, we might be able to get you a partial scholarship from the company itself, if you want it." Clara didn't answer right away, but that invitation sparked an idea that had once seemed distant to grow. Not as an exception, but through competence. And then something even more unexpected happened. A LinkedIn article went viral with the headline, "From cleaning assistant to a benchmark in maternal inclusion, the example rising from the ground floor." The author, an HR journalist who had watched the recording of the presentation and decided to tell the story. The text was shared thousands of times. Comments poured in from mothers, from leaders, from women who felt represented. The following week, a team from another company came to visit the building to learn about the pilot project for the maternal support room. Clara was invited to present, and for the first time, she entered a room as a technical expert, not as an exception, but as an expert in her own experience. Arthur watched everything from a distance. He no longer needed to be her shield. Clara was now walking on her own 2 feet, but he didn't hide his pride. One evening, as they were leaving the building together, he commented, "Remember when you said you were just a cleaner?" "I remember, and I still am, except now, with a microphone in my hand." They laughed, and they laughed like people sharing something bigger than a moment, a journey. But it was in Maya's face that she saw the true transformation. The baby, now almost 6 months old, nursed peacefully at her breast, while Clara filled her notebook with the next steps for the project. Maya slept with light breaths, her little arms relaxed, as if she were growing up in a slightly safer world, because of her mother's courage. At the end of that month, the maternal support room was officially inaugurated. Clara was invited to the symbolic ribbon cutting alongside Brenda, Megan, and Arthur. The name of the space was a surprise: the Present Mother Room, in honor of Clara Evans. She cried. And it wasn't a cry of sadness, nor of empty emotion. It was a cry of relief, as if finally life had looked back at her and said, "I saw what you did." Journalists took pictures, some mothers gave interviews, and a different atmosphere spread among the employees. It wasn't just about breastfeeding. It was about existing, about being able to be who you are, whole, within a work environment, and about having a voice. Clara was never treated as invisible again. She never had to hide her daughter as if she were a mistake, and those who had laughed now watched from a distance, with the same expression of someone who, deep down, knew they had missed their chance to be on the right side from the beginning. At the end of the ceremony, Arthur approached her one more time. "So, are you going to accept the scholarship?" "I'm still thinking about it." Scared, and brave, both at the same time, as always. That's how you change things, Clara, not knowing if it will work out, but going anyway. She looked at Maya, sleeping in her stroller, then at the plaque on the wall with her name, and then at him. "And if I accept, will you help me?" always. She took a deep breath, smiled, and for the first time she felt exactly where she was supposed to be. Clara learned that courage isn't always about raising your voice. Sometimes it's about holding a crying baby in your arms, with your heart in pieces, and still carrying on. It's about walking through hallways with your head down, bearing the weight of judgmental stares, and still believing you can be heard. Courage, she understood, is insisting on being who you are, even when the world insists on ignoring you. She didn't become a director, she didn't get rich, she didn't buy a new car or move to a new neighborhood. But she changed something much deeper, the way she saw herself. Before, she thought she was just one more tired mother, one more invisible employee. Now, she knew she was a bridge, a voice, an example, and no one could take that away from her. Clara also learned that it's not enough to fight alone, that every woman needs another who says, "I'm with you." And that real change isn't just born in boardrooms, it's born on the floor, in the hallway, in the restroom, where a mother takes a deep breath before going back to smile. In the company, the climate changed. Slowly. Some leaders began to listen more. Meetings took on a different tone, but above all, a seed was planted that a company that respects mothers respects life. As for Clara, she never forgot where she came from. She continued to help with tasks in her department, even after being officially included in the project. She made a point of reminding everyone, including herself, that she didn't have to stop being who she was to earn her space. And one afternoon, as she walked through the lobby holding Maya's hand, she heard something she had never heard from the security guard she saw every day. "Ms. Evans, good work up there. You're making history." She smiled, looked at her daughter, and replied, "We're just getting started." In the months that followed, what began as a simple report transformed into an official company program. The Present Mothers Project was implemented in 3 different branches, with nursing support rooms, rotating schedules, and even an emergency fund for single mothers in vulnerable situations. Clara was part of the monitoring team, now with an administrative position and a flexible schedule, without ever failing to visit the floors where it all began. She remained steadfast, sometimes tired, yes, but always with a purpose. Maya grew up healthy, smart, and with a curious gaze that charmed everyone around her. Ms. Eileen remained part of the family, now receiving a small stipend from the company as a formal caregiver, at Clara's request, and with HR's support. Arthur continued as a director, but became increasingly involved in human-centric initiatives within the organization. He gained prestige not just for results, but for being the first to truly listen. Brenda, formerly just a supervisor, was promoted to General Maintenance Coordinator, and she included a new mandatory module in the training, Empathy in the Workplace, conceived by her and co-written with Clara. As for Janine, she disappeared. She quietly requested a transfer months after the project's official presentation. She never did apologize, but for Clara, that no longer mattered. She had understood that not everyone is ready to see beyond their own reflection. Megan from HR became a personal friend. She would invite Clara to internal events, they would exchange books, and she encouraged her education. And she was the one who delivered the most unexpected news of all. Your full scholarship was approved. You're going to study human resources management with the company's support. Clara could hardly believe it. To go back to school at 26, after everything. But yes, it was happening. In her first class, she sat in the back row, her heart racing. And as she listened to the professor talk about leadership through active listening, she smiled, because deep down she knew she was already practicing it before she even learned its name. In the building where it all began, the employee notice board now displayed a small portrait in the internal Hall of Fame. A woman with a steady gaze, holding a child, in front of a plaque that read, "For every mother who has been silenced for too long, your voice starts here," and below in small letters a simple signature, Clara Evans. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button now. It's a simple gesture, but it helps this message reach more people. Tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? And if you also believe in the power of real stories, subscribe to the channel. There's a new video here every week, and I'd love to see you in the next one. In fact, go ahead and pick one of the stories appearing on your screen and join me. I'll see you there.